Well, for what it's worth, just thought I'd give a quick update from the last, oh, can't remember offhand which video it was. This wasn't the last few anyway. I ended up in the emergency room tonight. Ended up EMS hauled me out. Paramedics hauled me out. As you probably know from the last, I don't know, 2 or 3 videos I've done, I haven't been feeling good. And brother is concerned about COVID, which rightfully so, you know. I'm not gonna talk smack. Well, anyway, I went to lay down, right? And I couldn't lay down. I started having an asthma attack. Well, felt like one anyway. Couldn't hardly breathe. Then I started having a panic attack in the worst way. You know, it's panic attacks I know have gotten worse than what I've had it. But I started just from the inside out, I felt like I was freaking out. I couldn't control just anything really. I just felt like I wanted to jump out of my skin. So I ended up I'm calling 911. Well, no, I did call the non-emergency. So no, I lied. I never did call 911. I dialed non-emergency and they had paramedics come over from there. Well, in a case like this, they told me, don't be surprised if 1 or 2 police officers show up. They said, and a lot of times in a case like this, they said they send out an officer to be with the EMS, or the officer shows up before EMS to make sure the person's okay, what's going on, you know. And they said a lot of times it has to do with because the officer can make it there quicker than paramedics. So they said if an officer shows up, he's going to be there to check on you. Wait, you know, if you have to have, like, whether it be CPR or whatever, at least somebody's going to be there to do it. Okay, no problem. Well, then the neighbors we've got are the nosiest people around. They shove their nose into everything. Yelling, "What'd your brother do? Beat the living daylights out of you?" I'm sitting back going, really? You think just because I'm going into the hospital, it stems from something like that? Are you flippin' retarded? You ever stop to think there's more than domestic violence that goes on in this town? You ever stop to think maybe it's a medical emergency, like, oh, I don't know, I fell and broke a hip and need help? Maybe I'm having a heart attack, strokes, you know, list goes on. Like, you little two yahoos retarded or what? And they're like, the one comes up, "We want to see your brother get tased." And I'm like, yeah, and I'd love to see your butt going to juvie hall. You little monsters. Yeah, anyway, I went into the hospital. They were concerned about my oxygen levels. So they went, did everything they had to do there, checked me out. Well, they went and, like I say, they did a COVID test. That was uncomfortable. I tell you what, 10 seconds of a Q-tip going, well, about that far up the nose. About about 3/4 way up. I'm sitting there just boom, 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 boom. Uncomfortable. So then the doctor comes up a little while later and goes, "Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to release you, and I need you to drink as much water as humanly possible, to the point where you drink so much, you're full. Almost to the point where you want to get sick and throw up from having too much water, whatnot. But he says, I honestly feel whatever you have, you're at the tail end of it. And he says, if you did, or if you did have COVID, or you're still having symptoms of COVID, he says, there's nothing we can do for you. He says, he said, we can't give you medication, because one of the medications we could give you has to be within the first 5 days of you catching COVID. Well, he says, if you have COVID, it's been past 5 days, so that medication won't work. If we give you the second medication, which helps people in the first 10 days, well, you're pretty much at your limit, or at that point where we don't know if the medication will work anyway. And the medication, I don't remember what he called it, but he said the medication is hard to get a hold of. So he says, we're not going to even try to get it and treat you with it if it is COVID. Now, he says, I honestly feel you're at the tail end of your illness. He says, give it 5 days, quarantine as much as you can, and go from there. He says, if you're still feeling sick, well, then we have to dig into it deeper. But he says, right now, we want you to ride it out, drink plenty of water, and just see what happens. And he says, we'll let you know whether or not you have or had COVID on this whole ordeal. But he says, we won't know for at least 2 to 3 days. So I'm like, great, But he says, I'm confident that you're at the tail end of the stuff. He says the best thing you can do to relax if you have these symptoms, which is, it's like the common flu, but COVID. He says if you have COVID, the best thing you can do is lay on your side or try to lay on your stomach to alleviate pressure, what have you, any respiratory type problems. He says as soon as you lay on your back, he says everything's just it's gonna gum up the works a little bit more. So yeah, I'm gonna let you all go. If you're the type, prayer or two would be nice, but I'm not gonna hold anybody to that if they don't want to. But yeah, lovely ordeal. I knew that cop that was over here. There was 2 of them. One of them looked like a damn beanstalk, thin as hell. Not really, I guess, overly tall, but he was thin. Looked like he was malnourished. The other cop, holy crap, that guy was an 8. Big ol' white dude. Looked like he could have been a frickin' linebacker for Chicago Bears, for crying out loud. He looked like a frickin' linebacker. And he was just as big as one, too. He had to be about 6'1" in that area, 6'2" maybe, roughly. And he looked like he was about 300 pounds, all muscle. I'm sitting back going, what in the world? Either way, I'm going to get going, so I hope I can start making better videos other than this. Anyway, I'll see you on the flip side.